10 people, including a police officer, gunned down this week in a Boulder, Colorado grocery store. Just a tragic week. Here with us this morning is counterterrorism expert with Ontic, former special agent, best-selling author, and Austinite, Fred Burton. Fred, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me, Casey.
Thanks for coming on. So what are some of the things that you've been thinking about since this happened this week?
Well, this horrific event in Boulder on the heels of what happened in Atlanta and, of course, Nashville and then the Capitol riots, it just has been a tempo of tragedy and bad news. But when I look at an event like Boulder, Casey, I try to dissect it from the standpoint of what else could the shooter have looked at, because it's been my experience in investigating countless attacks like this is that most will do reconnaissance and research and cyber stalking of multiple different kinds of venues before they actually get into the vehicle and do the actual incident on that given day. So I think we have a lot of unknowns with this case, and certainly looking at this from an investigative perspective, I think the revelation that the FBI had looked at an associate of this individual that was involved in the shooting is something that I think is very interesting to me, because we don't know the nature of the FBI interest. It could have been something as simple as a foreign counterintelligence issue, or it might have been international or domestic terror.
Is there any way that this could have been prevented?
Well, you raise an interesting question. It boils down to his footprint and profile prior to carrying out this act. Clearly, in looking at his background, he had mental health issues from some of the statements that the family has raised. You can look at some of his social media postings that have been reported leading up to this event, which were troubling, obviously. So was he signaling some sort of intent? And then, of course, I believe it was 6 days before this incident, he goes out and buys the firearm that he was actually going to use for the attack in Boulder. Now, we're all brilliant after the fact, meaning when you connect the dots now with looking back over these events, you can kind of see perhaps a pathway to violence. But trying to figure out that pathway to violence before that threat actor strikes is very difficult to do without a lot of technology, a lot of integration of intelligence feeds, and you have to be kind of looking for these kinds of threat indicators in order to find them ahead of time.
Last question here. This always gets political whenever there's a mass shooting. Can you speak to that a little bit? Is gun control the answer? More gun regulations the answer? Or is there another way to prevent these mass shootings?
Well, I think, look, Casey, I've been involved in law enforcement and protection for better than 30 years now. And it's been my experience that if a threat actor wants to get their hands on a weapon, a firearm of any sorts, they're going to get one. So obviously there's going to be some questions asked as to this individual's mental health and his ability to get a firearm and so forth. Probably at the federal level, the ATF, Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, is looking at his forms that he might have filled out in purchasing that firearm to see if he made any false statements, for example, from an investigative perspective. So I have no doubt that that's something that the federal authorities are looking into as a result of this.
Fred Burton, counterterrorism expert and executive director at the Ontic Center for Protective Intelligence. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you for having me, Casey.